Hiya guys, today we're going to be looking at developing our knowledge on fiscal policy. We're going to be moving forward and looking in much more detail in relation to fiscal policy that impacts on both the demand side and then the supply side. So just as a quick reminder in terms of what we mean by fiscal policy, it's the use of government expenditure and taxation to influence the total level of activity within the economy. So as we found out from last session, this affects both aggregate demand and aggregate supply. Now just a couple of quick things before we push on. We looked in quite a lot of detail in terms of both taxation, and we also looked at government spending, and we saw that current spending would affect just aggregate demand, whereas capital spending would affect both aggregate demand and aggregate supply. Why? Any spending influences aggregate demand because it's a component of aggregate demand, C plus I plus G. Okay, so any government spending influences aggregate demand, but also some spending, capital spending on infrastructure, on equipment, will increase the productive capacity of the economy, so it also impacts upon aggregate supply. Okay, in your notes, you guys should be headed to this section. This is really important stuff, so please make sure that you're making detailed notes as we go through this. Okay, I'm just going to focus on the PowerPoint. Okay, in terms of things that you guys need to know, you've got to be able to explain how Keynesian economists believe fiscal policy can and should be used to control the level of aggregate demand in the economy, but again, under certain circumstances, perhaps in deep recessions and so on. Okay, there are different stakeholders that fiscal policy impacts, and we're going to have a look at those in turn: consumers, businesses and government. And in terms of the key roles for fiscal policy, just a little reminder of some of those roles. This taxation is used to finance government spending. This can alter the distribution of income and wealth. Certainly state benefits provide a safety net for people, and that includes pensions as well. It can be used to tackle market failures. It can be used to try and incentivize firms to improve competitiveness, and it can also manage the economy. The economic importance of government spending. So just in terms of this, we know it's a component of aggregate demand. We know that every time money is spent, it's not equally all over the country. There are going to be particular localized and regional impacts. It can be used to achieve greater equality through the tax and benefit system, and it can also tackle market failure through providing public and merit goods. Now, just in terms of this, what we need to be looking at, so we've looked at government spending, we also need to look at taxation. Remember, changes in tax rates and allowances can have both a direct and indirect impact. You guys have got to be confident that you know, pause the video if you need to, go back to your notes if you need to, which are the direct taxes, which are the indirect taxes. Okay, in terms of government spending affecting incomes, as we just mentioned, that can happen through welfare state transfers and also through other in-kind benefits as well. Okay, and that's through education, through healthcare, through social housing and so on. In terms of your notes, following forward, for me this is page 73, but it's the heading that you guys have got: consumers, changes in tax. Okay, so in terms of any change in tax, and you guys again, you've got to think quite specifically what type of tax are we referring to. Okay, if it's a change in income tax, that is going to impact upon an individual or a household's disposable income. Okay, so that will affect consumption. In terms of the impacts on consumers, changes in government spending are definitely going to impact the standard of living, because it's going to impact on the quantity and the quality of public services available to people in those areas. In terms of firms, when there's a change in tax, corporation tax will hit a business's profits and obviously dividends, but also its ability to reinvest or to invest in both capital and research and development. National insurance contributions are paid for. Firms pay a contribution towards national insurance for employees, and also they're responsible for paying indirect taxes such as VAT, excise duties, and so on. The negatives of this, in terms of any increase in taxes, they increase business costs and will negatively impact upon profits. The positives are that actually there can be tax breaks, tax cuts, tax incentives, all means the same thing, which will then encourage firms to invest in new capital and or research, and we saw some of that within the budget. Okay, in terms of businesses, how else are they impacted? Well, when governments change their spending, perhaps there's an increase in government spending. When there's a new hospital that needs to be built and so on, these are contracts that go to the private sector. Okay, so in terms of all of this, the construction, the equipment, and the supply, the maintenance, private firms can benefit from all. And in terms of that, it means that they produce a higher level of output, they generate higher profits, and they are able to expand. So just in terms of this, again, consider the multiplier effect of this spending. Remember, one person's spending becomes another person's income. The localized and regional positive multiplier effects here, including all the way down the supply chain. I want you guys to spend a little bit of time on this. For me, this is on page 75, but find the appropriate page. When you're talking about expansionary fiscal policy, you need to consider what the good economics is. How do I explain this? Now, we know that there would be a cut in taxes. So what kind of taxes are there? Well, if there's a cut in income tax, that's going to boost an individual's disposable income, what they've got left after tax, and as a result there will be an increase in consumption. If there's a cut in indirect taxes such as VAT or excise duties, really what's happened is that prices are usually lowered, and that means that people have higher purchasing power or a higher real income, again increasing consumption. Now, when there's a cut in corporation tax, how do we explain this? Where's the good economics? The correct phrase to use is that there will be an increase or higher post-tax profits for firms, which enhances their ability to spend on capital or research and development. Now you would assume that would boost aggregate supply as well. Something that you guys don't consider, and all of you, I imagine, have got bank accounts, and if you're like me, you had very, very little in it when at the age of 17, 18, but you got a little bit of interest each year. For me, it was about 3p, but for you guys, hopefully considerably more. But you pay tax on it as well. So you pay tax on any interest earned from savings. So if there's a cut in that, that basically means that kind of globally, in terms of everyone in the economy, it's going to boost people's disposable income. Because they're getting more interest from their savings because less has been taken by the government in terms of tax, and again that will add to consumer demand. Remember, the ability to explain that is important. This next section helps you with the fifth period work that you guys have got to do, and I'm going to give you a little bit of background to this as well. So in 2008, this was the credit crunch. UK officially entered recession, one of the deepest recessions of the Great Depression of the 1920s. And you're asked to use an appropriate theory, illustrate the situation the British economy was in, and evaluate the potential role of fiscal policy in helping the UK government get out of recession. So what I want you guys to do on this, and I'm going to give you a little bit of further background. What I want you to consider is, you're going to have to draw an ADAS diagram. you're going to have to think, if the UK was in recession, okay, where you would put that initial equilibrium. Okay, I want you to have a go at it yourselves. If you're absolutely lost, message me privately, but I want you to have a go at it yourselves, okay? And don't throw up the white flag. Have a go. Okay, the only way you're going to improve is by having a go. And then the role of fiscal policy. So how can the UK government get the economy? How could the UK government get the economy out of recession? So taxation on government spending. Okay, so you guys are going to have to draw an appropriate diagram, analyze it, but also talk about the pros and cons if you can. Okay, do the best you can. Okay, so in terms of this, yeah, the economy was in recession. Now there's a little video I used to play students, but unfortunately over time the internet doesn't support things that become several years old, and it was a really good video. So I'll just give you, I've typed up a bit of the background for you. So at the sharp end of the credit crunch, a large number of firms were struggling, jobs were being lost, profits were tumbling. This affected not just small firms but larger firms, and obviously all of those throughout the supply chain if demand for goods and services fell. Now some firms changed what they sold, so butchers would sell cheaper cuts. Less normal goods were being bought, certainly less luxury goods were being bought, and you can see people were switching, just like with the butchers, to more inferior goods, more inferior cuts. Now manufacturing output fell, unemployment reached its highest level in a decade, and the banks were very limited funds. Credit was very scarce. Okay, so they had to make choices. Who do I lend to? And there were examples in the video that I wished I could show you, where some building firms, despite being really profitable, always have been profitable, never had an issue, with getting loans cancelled all of a sudden. With the scarcity of funds, they were deemed too risky, and it led to some firms collapsing. Prices fell, some stores closed. In terms of the credit crunch, were there any winners? Well, those selling inferior goods certainly did well. The likes of Domino's, so fast food outlets, cobblers, people didn't want to replace their shoes, cheaper to get them repaired. Okay, when times are tight, people find ways. And actually note, even though Britain kind of at one point officially entered recession, sometimes they go back and they change the data, and it was found actually in the end that Britain technically didn't enter a recession, and a recession occurs where there are 2 or more consecutive quarters of negative growth. Okay, this is, so you guys have to have a go at that for your 5th period work. This is part 1 video. Okay, there are 2 videos. Okay, so log off and move forward to the 2nd video for this session.